Have you ever poured your heart and soul into a relationship, giving endlessly of your love, patience, and understanding, only to find yourself feeling increasingly empty and depleted, as if no matter how much you offer, it's never quite enough? This isn't a reflection of your inadequacy or a failure of your capacity for love, rather, it's a harsh but necessary truth that unveils the dynamics at play when dealing with a narcissist. We often cling to the hope that through sheer force of will, by enduring just a little bit longer and trying a bit harder, we can somehow catalyze a transformation, coaxing the narcissist into a place of genuine connection and reciprocal affection. But here lies a profoundly difficult truth to accept: a narcissist doesn't truly seek love in the way most people understand it. Instead, their driving force is the pursuit of control. Where healthy love flourishes on a foundation of mutual respect, vulnerability, and authentic emotional exchange, a narcissist thrives on dominance, manipulation, and the relentless seeking of validation. To them, relationships aren't about forging meaningful connections, sharing experiences, and offering mutual support. They're strategic battlegrounds where power is the ultimate prize. The initial stages of interaction with a narcissist can be deceptively subtle. Their need for control doesn't manifest as outright aggression or blatant demands but begins with seemingly innocuous comments and gentle suggestions. It might start with a remark about what you should wear, subtly nudging you towards a style that aligns with their preferences and reinforces their control over your image. Or perhaps it's a suggestion about who you should spend your time with, gradually isolating you from your support network and making you increasingly dependent on them for social interaction and validation. These actions, seemingly minor in isolation, serve as subtle tests of your boundaries, allowing the narcissist to gauge how much control they can exert and how easily they can bend reality to their will. A disapproving glance, a dismissive sigh, or a carefully worded critique can be enough to make you second-guess yourself, constantly seeking their approval and modifying your behavior to avoid their displeasure. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, your independence erodes, and you find yourself walking on eggshells, meticulously monitoring your words and actions to avoid triggering their disapproval or anger. You become increasingly attuned to their moods, anticipating their needs and sacrificing your own desires in an attempt to maintain a semblance of peace and harmony. This insidious erosion of independence often occurs without you even realizing it, as the narcissist's manipulations are designed to be subtle and gradual, making it difficult to pinpoint the exact moment when the balance of power shifted. You become so accustomed to seeking their approval and accommodating their needs that it becomes second nature, a deeply ingrained habit that is difficult to break. However, there's a critical truth that narcissists desperately want to keep hidden, a truth that holds the key to dismantling their power and reclaiming your own freedom. The moment you summon the courage to walk away, to sever the ties that bind you to their manipulative control, their carefully constructed illusion crumbles, and their power over you evaporates. Their dominance exists only as long as you remain within their sphere of influence, willingly or unwillingly participating in their games. It's your presence, your attention, and your willingness to engage that fuels their ego and sustains their sense of superiority. When you reclaim your freedom, you disrupt this dynamic, depriving them of the validation and control they so desperately crave. Walking away isn't merely an escape from a toxic situation, it's a profound act of strength, a declaration of self-respect, and a conscious choice to prioritize your own well-being over their manipulation. It's a recognition that you deserve to be treated with kindness, compassion, and respect, and that you have the power to create a life filled with genuine connection and authentic happiness. And that's precisely what this exploration delves into, the reasons why a narcissist begins to fall apart without your presence, and how the enduring wisdom of Stoicism can provide a guiding light, illuminating the path toward true emotional freedom and resilience. Understanding these dynamics could fundamentally transform your life, empowering you to break free from toxic relationships and cultivate a deep sense of self-worth and inner peace. Now, let's delve into the specific tactics of control and manipulation that narcissists employ. A narcissist simply cannot tolerate true independence in a partner. They view a companion who possesses their own thoughts, acts on their own initiative, and asserts their own boundaries not as an equal partner but as a direct threat to their carefully constructed sense of self. And so, the insidious game of control begins, often subtly at first. It starts with what seems like a quiet test of boundaries, a gentle probing to determine the extent of their influence and how easily they can mold reality to suit their desires. They meticulously gauge how much control they can exert, how effectively they can bend your perception of events, and how readily you will comply with their demands. As the relationship deepens, so does their insatiable need for dominance. They seek to dictate the emotional climate of the relationship, deciding when affection is dispensed and when it's withheld, creating a sense of instability and dependence. This unpredictability is not accidental, it's a deliberate tactic designed to keep their partner perpetually off balance, constantly striving to regain approval and recapture the warmth that once seemed so freely offered. The narcissist carefully calibrates their behavior, alternating between moments of intense affection and periods of cold detachment, creating a cycle of hope and despair that keeps their partner emotionally invested and eager to please. In this carefully choreographed dance of uncertainty, control is subtly strengthened, and dependence is gradually forged. The narcissist cultivates a situation where their partner feels increasingly reliant on them for validation, support, and a sense of security, making it more difficult to break free from their manipulative grasp. It's crucial to understand that a narcissist's greatest fear isn't the loss of love, but the loss of control. Love, in the way most people understand it, characterized by mutual respect, unwavering trust, and the willingness to be vulnerable, simply doesn't exist in their realm of experience. To a narcissist, relationships aren't about connection, they're about power. The moment their partner begins to assert their independence, setting firm boundaries and refusing to passively play along with their manipulative games, the illusion begins to crack, revealing the fragile and insecure core beneath the carefully constructed facade. And when control begins to slip, their true nature is unveiled. They lash out not from hurt or sadness, but from a deep-seated fear of losing their grip on the situation. Guilt, rage, and even feigned vulnerability become weapons of last resort, deployed strategically to manipulate their partner into submission. If subtle manipulation fails, they resort to devaluation, belittling their partner, planting seeds of doubt, and relentlessly undermining their self-worth. Their goal is not reconciliation or genuine resolution but the re-establishment of dominance, a desperate attempt to regain control over the narrative and maintain their position of power. They don't mourn the loss of affection or connection, they panic at the erosion of their authority. To a narcissist, relationships are a battlefield where one must dominate or be dominated. The concept of true equality is utterly foreign to them because it directly threatens their carefully cultivated sense of superiority. Relinquishing control, even momentarily, equates to defeat, and they will resort to any means necessary to avoid that outcome, clinging desperately to their position of power. This insatiable hunger for control extends far beyond romantic relationships, permeating friendships, workplaces, and even family dynamics. The same patterns emerge in various contexts. The narcissist must always be the center of gravity, the voice that carries the most weight, and the needs that take precedence above all others. They seek to position themselves as the indispensable figure, the one who holds all the power and influence. And when someone begins to slip from their grasp, when they sense that their control is waning, desperation sets in. They react with a predictable array of manipulative tactics, including coercion, emotional blackmail, and outright hostility. They may attempt to guilt-trip others into submission, threaten to withdraw affection or support, or even resort to spreading rumors and lies to damage their reputation. For those entangled in such a web of manipulation and control, understanding this fundamental truth is absolutely vital. You're not dealing with someone who genuinely seeks mutual happiness or authentic connection, you're dealing with someone whose very sense of self hinges on dominance. To them, control is survival, and the moment they feel it slipping, their carefully constructed world begins to unravel. This is precisely why walking away is such a profoundly powerful act. Not only does it liberate you from their manipulative grip, but it also forces them to confront the one thing they fear most, their own irrelevance. Now, let's explore another crucial aspect of the narcissistic personality, their profound dependence on external validation. The narcissist's sense of self isn't built on genuine confidence or rooted in inner strength, it's a fragile illusion meticulously held together by the constant stream of validation they extract from others. Unlike individuals who cultivate self-worth through personal growth, meaningful relationships, and a clear sense of purpose, the narcissist cannot stand alone. Their identity is entirely contingent on external reinforcement, like a delicate house of cards that collapses without support. Without an audience to admire them, without a steady flow of attention to feed their insatiable ego, their carefully crafted image begins to crumble, revealing the deep and consuming insecurity that lies beneath their grandiose facade, an insecurity they will go to great lengths to conceal. When you're in a relationship with a narcissist, whether as a partner, friend, or family member, you're not just another person in their life, you're their primary source of psychological fuel. Your admiration, your willingness to meet their endless demands, and even your emotional reactions, whether joy, frustration, or despair, all serve a single, insidious purpose, to sustain their illusion of superiority. They feed off your energy, your sacrifices, and even your suffering, using your emotions as a mirror to reflect back their idealized self-image. The more invested you become in the relationship, the more control they wield over you, as your emotional well-being becomes increasingly intertwined with their approval and validation. This is why narcissists are often drawn to empathetic and compassionate individuals, those who are naturally inclined to give, to nurture, and to see the best in others. These individuals make the perfect supply, because they are more likely to tolerate the narcissist's manipulative behavior, driven by a desire to fix things and a belief that their patience and love will eventually unlock some hidden, wounded part of them. But here lies a painful truth: the narcissist is not interested in change or growth. Growth would require self-awareness, a willingness to confront their flaws and take responsibility for their actions, and self-awareness would shatter the carefully constructed image they have built, exposing the vulnerability they desperately try to conceal. What they truly seek is not love, but power, not partnership, but control. Any challenge to this control, no matter how small or insignificant it may seem, is perceived as a direct threat to their very existence. A simple request for respect, an expression of disappointment, or a refusal to comply with their expectations is enough to shake their carefully constructed foundation. They don't see these moments as opportunities for healthy communication or reciprocal understanding, they see them as an attack on their authority, and like a cornered predator, they react accordingly. Gaslighting, guilt-tripping, silent treatment, and explosive outbursts of rage are all tools in the narcissist's arsenal, deployed strategically to regain their dominance and silence any dissent. They will twist reality, making you question your own perceptions and memories, and they will shift blame, convincing you that the problem is not their behavior but your reaction to it. Their goal is not resolution or understanding, but control, to keep you doubting yourself, seeking their approval, and ultimately surrendering to their version of reality. But here's what they cannot afford for you to realize: their confidence is an illusion. True confidence is self-sustaining, built on integrity, self-awareness, and a stable sense of worth. Narcissistic superiority, however, is hollow and brittle. It exists only as long as others believe in it, as long as they are willing to play along with the narcissist's carefully crafted narrative. Without constant validation, their meticulously maintained persona begins to crack, revealing the insecurity and emptiness beneath the surface. This is why they react so intensely when they sense someone pulling away. If they feel control slipping, they will do whatever it takes to pull you back in, resorting to a variety of manipulative tactics. They may suddenly become affectionate, showering you with compliments and promises of change, a tactic known as love bombing. They may cast themselves as the victim, accusing you of abandoning them unfairly or exaggerating their own suffering to elicit your sympathy. Or they may turn cold and cruel, discarding you before you can leave them, hoping to make you feel as worthless as they fear themselves to be. Even in cases where a narcissist appears indifferent to losing someone, this detachment is often a mask, a carefully constructed defense mechanism designed to conceal their underlying vulnerability. They may immediately seek out a new source of validation, moving on with alarming speed, not because they have healed or processed the loss, but because they cannot function without someone to mirror their self-image back to them. If they cannot quickly replace their supply, their carefully maintained sense of superiority begins to crumble, and they are forced to confront the painful reality of their own dependence. The reality is simple yet profound: a narcissist's power exists only as long as others give it to them. Their sense of superiority is not real, it's merely a reflection of the belief others place in it. And the moment that belief is withdrawn, the illusion shatters, leaving them exposed and vulnerable. Now, let's consider the critical role of boundaries and the profound impact of loss on a narcissist. When you walk away from a narcissist, you force them to confront the one thing they have spent their entire lives avoiding: themselves. They are not the confident, self-sufficient individuals they pretend to be. Beneath the illusion of power and control lies deep insecurity and an overwhelming dependence on external validation. As long as they can control someone, whether through admiration, fear, or manipulation, they can maintain the fantasy that they are superior, intelligent, and worthy. But when that control is taken away, when you sever the ties that bind you to their manipulative web, their world starts to unravel. A narcissist avoids self-reflection at all costs. To look inward would mean confronting their flaws, weaknesses, and emotional wounds, something they are fundamentally unwilling to do. Instead, they construct a false identity, shifting blame onto others and rewriting reality to protect themselves from the painful truth. This is why they gaslight, create chaos, and manipulate. It keeps them distracted from the truth, preventing them from having to confront the reality of their own inadequacy. Walking away strips them of a key component of their defense system. Without you, they lose a source of validation, a scapegoat for their problems, and a way to avoid their own emptiness. At first, they will react with frantic attempts to regain control. They may love bomb you with grand promises of change, showering you with affection and attention in an attempt to lure you back into their orbit. They may guilt-trip you, casting themselves as the victim and exaggerating their own suffering to elicit your sympathy. Or they may lash out in anger, belittling you, insulting your character, and attempting to make you doubt yourself and your decision. Every reaction, no matter how extreme or contradictory it may seem, serves the same purpose: to pull you back in and re-establish control. But when none of these tactics work, when they truly lose access to you, their identity starts to deteriorate. They can no longer define themselves through your reactions, your pain, or your attention. The superiority they projected was never real, it only existed because someone was there to believe in it. And when that belief is withdrawn, they are left with nothing but their own emptiness and insecurity. This is when the narcissist enters a state of emotional and psychological distress. Some spiral into depression, consumed by boredom, restlessness, and an unbearable sense of insignificance. They feel adrift and purposeless, unable to find meaning or satisfaction in their lives without the constant validation of others. Others desperately seek out a new source of validation, quickly jumping into another relationship or surrounding themselves with people who will reinforce their ego and cater to their every whim. They will do anything to avoid being alone with their thoughts because when they are, the truth becomes unavoidable: they are fundamentally empty and insecure. One of the most painful realizations for a narcissist is that they are nothing without others to mirror back their image of superiority. They have spent their lives ensuring that people reflect back the version of themselves they want to see, the intelligent, successful, admired, and powerful individual they believe themselves to be. But when those reflections disappear, when they are left with no one to validate their false self-image, they are left with nothing but self-doubt and despair. The confidence they once displayed was never genuine, it was a performance propped up by those who played along. Without their audience, they are forced to confront just how fragile and insecure they truly are. This is why losing someone who genuinely cared for them is so devastating, not because they loved in the way emotionally secure individuals do, but because they relied on that person to sustain their false self-image. They needed to feel desired, needed, and in control. When that is taken away, they experience something akin to an existential crisis, a profound sense of loss and disorientation. The person who once provided them with endless validation is gone, and in their absence, the narcissist is left to face their greatest fear, their own emptiness. Despite their outward bravado and carefully cultivated image of self-sufficiency, narcissists are profoundly dependent on others. They do not possess the internal stability needed to sustain their own sense of self-worth. Instead, they rely on external validation, control, and admiration to maintain their illusion of superiority. The moment they are deprived of these sources of reinforcement, their carefully constructed persona begins to crumble. Unlike emotionally secure individuals who build self-worth through their actions, achievements, and personal growth, a narcissist requires constant external affirmation. This is why they surround themselves with people they can manipulate, those who will reflect back the image they want to see, who will praise their accomplishments, and who will tolerate their mistreatment. Their relationships are not based on mutual respect or genuine connection, they are built on dominance and control. As long as they have someone to manipulate, they can sustain the illusion that they are powerful, intelligent, and worthy. However, this dependence is not always obvious. In fact, narcissists go to great lengths to disguise it, cultivating an image of independence, boasting about how little they need others, or how easily they can replace people. They dismiss vulnerability as weakness and ridicule emotional depth in others, projecting an image of stoicism and self-reliance. But this is not because they are truly independent, it is because they are terrified of admitting how much they rely on external validation. To acknowledge their dependence would be to shatter the illusion of superiority they have worked so hard to create. This becomes painfully clear when someone walks away. A truly self-sufficient person can accept loss, process their emotions, and move forward, albeit with sadness and perhaps a period of grieving. A narcissist, however, reacts with panic, rage, or desperate attempts to reassert control. They are not devastated because they lost a meaningful relationship, they are devastated because they lost a crucial source of validation. Without someone to mirror their idealized self-image, they struggle to maintain the illusion, and the emptiness they have always tried to avoid becomes overwhelming. When they no longer have control over someone, they are forced to confront a truth they have always denied: their power was never real. It only existed because others played along, allowing themselves to be manipulated and controlled. The moment someone refuses to engage, refuses to respond, and refuses to be manipulated, the narcissist is left with nothing but their own inadequacies. This is why narcissists struggle so deeply with rejection. It is not just about losing a person, it is about losing a part of their identity. They have built their self-worth around the belief that they are irresistible, dominant, and superior. When someone walks away, it shatters that illusion, forcing them to reckon with the painful reality that they are not as untouchable as they believed. Rather than processing this in a healthy way, they often seek to immediately replace the lost source of validation. This is why they may jump into a new relationship almost instantly, surround themselves with new admirers, or engage in reckless behavior to regain a sense of control. They do not take time to reflect because doing so would mean confronting their own dependence and emptiness, something they are simply incapable of doing. For those who have been entangled with a narcissist, understanding this dynamic is crucial. It is easy to believe that the narcissist is strong and independent, that they will simply move on without a second thought. But in reality, their entire existence is structured around avoiding the truth of their own dependence. The moment their control is taken away, they are left in a state of internal chaos. Their confidence was never real, it was borrowed from the people who surrounded them. And without those people, their carefully maintained superiority begins to dissolve, revealing the fragile and insecure individual beneath the surface. Now, let's discuss the unraveling that occurs when a narcissist confronts emptiness, and the aftermath of that confrontation. A narcissist lives under the illusion of control, not just over themselves but over those around them. They manipulate, gaslight, and emotionally exploit others to ensure that their version of reality remains dominant, creating a world where they are always right and everyone else is wrong. They dictate the terms of the relationship, deciding when they will offer affection, when they will withdraw, and how the other person is allowed to feel. They seek to control every aspect of the interaction, ensuring that they maintain their position of power and superiority. As long as they can maintain this dynamic, they feel powerful and in control, able to orchestrate their environment to suit their needs. But the moment someone establishes firm boundaries, refusing to play along with their manipulative games, the entire foundation of their control begins to crumble. Boundaries expose a narcissist's true nature, revealing that the power they believed they had over someone was never real, it was only granted to them by the other person's willingness to engage and comply. A narcissist thrives in relationships where their partner is constantly trying to please them, afraid of upsetting them, and willing to tolerate mistreatment in the hope that things will improve. This dynamic reinforces their illusion of superiority, allowing them to believe that they are inherently more worthy and deserving than their partner. But when someone stops reacting the way the narcissist expects, when they refuse to be manipulated and stand up for their own needs, the narcissist is faced with a reality they cannot accept: they were never in control to begin with. A narcissist does not respect boundaries because boundaries represent autonomy, and autonomy is a direct threat to their dominance. If they cannot dictate how you feel, what you do, or how you respond to them, they are forced to acknowledge that their power was never absolute. This realization is intolerable to them, as it shatters their carefully constructed illusion of control. Rather than adapting to a healthier dynamic, one based on mutual respect and understanding, they escalate their behavior in an attempt to regain control. They may push boundaries, testing limits to see if they can wear the other person down and force them to comply. If someone asks for space, the narcissist may suddenly become overly affectionate, appearing at unexpected times or demanding attention in ways designed to make it difficult to enforce the boundary. If someone refuses to engage in an argument, the narcissist may provoke them further, using insults, accusations, or passive aggression to elicit an emotional reaction. Their goal is not just to break the boundary but to reaffirm their dominance and prove that they are still in control. When these tactics fail, the narcissist may resort to playing the victim. They will accuse the other person of being cold, ungrateful, or even cruel for setting boundaries. They will bring up past sacrifices, real or imagined, painting themselves as the injured party in an attempt to manipulate guilt and force the other person to back down. If they can make the person enforcing the boundary feel responsible for their suffering, they believe they can regain the upper hand and re-establish their dominance. And if all else fails, if the narcissist realizes that they can no longer manipulate someone, they may shift their strategy entirely. Instead of aggression or guilt, they may pretend to change, promising to respect limits, to be different, to finally listen and understand. They may shower you with apologies, profess their undying love, and vow to become the person you always wanted them to be. But this is rarely genuine; it is often a last-ditch effort to re-establish control, a manipulative tactic designed to lure you back into their web. And the moment they feel secure again, the moment they believe they have regained your trust, their old behaviors return, sometimes even worse than before. What makes boundaries so powerful is that they force a narcissist to confront something they have spent their entire lives avoiding: their own dependence on others. A narcissist believes they are the dominant force in their relationships, the one in control, the one who dictates the terms. But boundaries prove otherwise. They reveal that the narcissist's power was never inherent, it was only as strong as the other person's willingness to comply. A person who sets and maintains boundaries is a person who cannot be controlled, and a narcissist without control is left with nothing but their own emptiness and insecurity. They cannot manipulate someone who refuses to engage in their games, they cannot dominate someone who asserts their own needs, and they cannot maintain superiority when the other person is no longer seeking their approval. This is why boundaries are intolerable to a narcissist. They are not just limits on behavior, they are a direct challenge to the false identity they have built, a constant reminder that they are not as powerful or in control as they believe themselves to be. When a narcissist encounters someone who refuses to play by their rules, they are forced to confront the reality that their power was always an illusion, a carefully constructed facade that crumbles when exposed to the light of truth. Without control, they have no foundation; without someone to manipulate, they are left with nothing but themselves. A narcissist is not wired for genuine self-reflection. They do not engage in deep introspection, nor do they take responsibility for their actions as emotionally secure individuals do. Instead, they construct a reality in which they are always right, always justified, and always superior, a narrative that protects them from having to confront their own flaws and insecurities. This carefully maintained illusion is only sustainable as long as they have others who will reinforce it, people who will accept their version of events, excuse their behavior, and continue to validate the false self they present to the world. But when they lose access to that validation, when someone walks away and refuses to participate in their manipulation, the narcissist is left in a psychological freefall, stripped of the defenses that have protected them for so long. They do not merely desire attention, they require it. It is their lifeline, the fragile thread that holds their sense of self together. Unlike those with a stable inner world, a narcissist's identity is entirely dependent on external reinforcement. They need to be admired, feared, or envied to maintain their self-worth. And if they cannot secure positive validation, they will settle for negative attention, stirring up conflict just to feel relevant. As long as they can provoke a reaction, they can convince themselves that they still hold power, that they still matter. But when someone walks away without looking back, when they stop reacting, stop feeding the narcissist's ego, stop engaging in their carefully constructed narrative, that power vanishes, and in its absence, the narcissist is left with the one thing they fear most, their own emptiness. This is why walking away is the ultimate loss for a narcissist. It is not just about losing a person, it is about losing a source of identity reinforcement, a mirror that reflected back their idealized self-image. When you refuse to engage, when you no longer react to their manipulation, their carefully constructed persona begins to crack. Without external validation, they are left with the one thing they fear most, their own emptiness, the void they have spent their entire lives trying to avoid. At first, they may act indifferent, pretending that your absence means nothing, mocking the idea that they were ever affected by your departure. They may even spread rumors or lies to discredit you, attempting to salvage their reputation and maintain their illusion of superiority. But this is merely a defense, a fragile attempt to preserve the illusion of invincibility. Beneath the surface, the loss begins to take its toll. Without someone to reflect their sense of superiority, their identity starts to feel unstable. The foundation upon which they have built their self-worth begins to crumble, leaving them feeling lost and insecure. Some will desperately seek a replacement, jumping into new relationships or surrounding themselves with admirers, hoping to fill the void left by your absence. Others will lash out, spreading lies, seeking revenge, and rewriting reality to cast themselves as the victim, attempting to regain control of the narrative and salvage their wounded ego. But no matter how hard they try to regain control, the fundamental truth remains: their power was never real, it only existed because someone allowed it. This is why standing firm is so important. A narcissist will often return, not because they have changed or because they genuinely care about you, but because they want to reclaim the control they lost, to reassert their dominance and feed their insatiable ego. Recognizing this cycle is key to breaking free for good. This intricate dance of manipulation and control, driven by an insatiable need for validation and a deep-seated fear of emptiness, is the essence of the narcissistic personality. By understanding these dynamics, you can begin to dismantle the power they hold over you and reclaim your own freedom. In summary, we've explored how narcissists use control and manipulation as their primary tools in relationships, driven by a deep need for external validation and a fear of their own emptiness. Their tactics, often subtle at first, aim to erode independence and create dependence. Walking away deprives them of their supply and forces them to confront their fragile self-image. Setting boundaries is crucial to breaking free from their control and reclaiming your emotional freedom.